Greetings, everyone.
Good evening, everybody.
I'm Jonathan,
I'm Nick,
and we are the Gosslings.
and we're glad you're joining us tonight. Thanks for waiting. We know we're a couple minutes late,
Yeah.
but we're glad you're here. Hope your last Sunday before Christmas is going well. You're probably watching football.
The calm before the storm.
We are not watching football. This is for people who are more aware of what's going on in the world.
we're not sports ball aficionados.
We're not sports ball aficionados by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
We're
No.
glad you're here with us, watching us instead of the Dallas Cowgirls or whatever the team's called. I don't know.
It's a whole other sport.
But let's get started without further ado. If you would, raise your drinking vessels and toast with us. Take up the broken sword of your father
and strike down the darkness.
Cheers.
Cheers. Say, Nick, these are some fancy mugs we're drinking out of.
They are.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about them?
Well, they're called the Kothon Spartan mug.
Yeah.
This is from our in-kind sponsor, Joel Cherico at ChericoPottery.com. These are the mugs that the Spartans drank out of.
Nice.
As best we know.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the closest thing to what is described in history. Joel handcrafts each and every one of these by hand.
Mm-hmm.
And he designed this mug in collaboration with Stephen Pressfield, who's quite the subject matter expert.
Yeah, he is.
When it comes to the Spartans.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Author of The Gates of Fire,
Indeed.
My favorite novel. And
good. Gates of Fire.
Each one of these is handmade and hand painted. Joel makes a ton of handcrafted pottery at ChericoPottery.com. Everybody should check them out.
100%.
They're fantastic.
100% check it out. Check it out.
Mm-hmm.
And why don't you mention our other sponsor?
Yes, if you haven't noticed, in keeping with the theme of our Kothon Spartan mugs, you may have noticed the luxurious Leonidian beard that I have been sporting here for the past few months. And that is thanks to Mike Fisher, who is the owner and proprietor of Jardani Jovanovic hair care products. Hair care products and skincare products made by real men for real men, or as I like to say, be as sexy as you are deadly. Give 007 a run for his money. Be the John Wick of your local HOA with JardaniJovanovic.com.
That's right.
Excellent business. Thank you, Mike.
Absolutely. We really appreciate the support, Mike. Thank you so much. And just wanted to say greetings and Merry Christmas as well to the Trump card who's watching. Thank you. Glad you guys are joining us. It looks like we got several people watching right now. Fantastic. We had an amazing we had an amazing
This is a big week for us.
It has been a huge week for us.
Yeah.
We had the privilege of interviewing none other than John Howler.
Yeah.
From Prophecy Update out of Fellowship Bible Church or Fellowship Bible Chapel. And that interview is something we're going to play for you here in just a second. When we were doing the interview with him, he was actually in Jerusalem right now. He's in Jerusalem for a conference. I can't remember the name of the conference off the top of my head. But he is boots on the ground there, first person, kind of giving us the lowdown on the spirit of the times in Jerusalem. Yeah. And how that ties into his prophecy updates.
Yeah.
Yep.
We had an amazing time with John. It was a short interview because we were pressed for time. But honestly, John is kind of like next week's guest, in that we could probably talk to John for
hours and hours,
3 hours.
Yeah.
We could have so much to talk about with John. He's incredibly gracious with his time. He's incredibly informative. He loves going down rabbit trails and doing deep dives. He's not shy about, he doesn't get gun shy about discussing any topic. We had an absolute blast with him. So we're gonna air roughly 2/3 of the interview with John that we recorded last week, and we'll be in the chat to interact and answer any questions that anybody might have. But if you want to see the entire interview, Nick, what is the best way to watch the entire unedited interviews with all of the guests on the Gosslings?
Including all the stuff we're not allowed to talk about on YouTube. You can go to patreon.com/the Gosslings, sign up there, become a member, and you can watch every bit of the interview with our guests moving forward. That's where you can find everything.
Yeah.
We still reserve quite a bit of great information for free here on the channel. As you're gonna see tonight. But you can get the full experience if you become a patron, patreon.com/the Gosslings.
Yeah. And also, this was another big week for us because we hit 1,000 subscribers.
Oh, did we hit 1,000 subscribers? Yes, we did. We hit 1,000 subscribers this week. We've been working really hard at that. Thank you guys. That's all because of you guys doing the thing, doing the needful, and clicking the subscribe button, which we can't thank you enough for. Thank you guys so much. We finally hit our goal. We were really wanting to do that before the end of the year, and so
Nailed
encouraging. And glad that you guys love the interviews and our guests enough to hit the button. So thank you for doing that.
And if you haven't yet, you absolutely should subscribe.
He's guiding me through all the captions and steps. Thank you. I need it.
Nick clicks the button. I just talk.
I don't have a checklist. I need to have a checklist. This is great. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
so good.
If you are watching us because maybe you heard about us because of John Holler, or maybe you found us through a Gary Wayne interview or something else, maybe a Stephen Pressfield interview, you should absolutely subscribe. Take up, as Nick says, take up the broken sword of your finger.
That's right.
And strike the bell and become a subscriber to the Gosslings. And then you can see if you would like to also become a Patreon member as well. But we are booked out through January and into the beginning of February with guests. And we have several more in the works. So every Sunday through January and into February, we will have guests at the same time, 5:30 or 4:30 p.m. Central Time, maybe 5
Yeah, we might push it to 5.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, we'll see.
We record our interviews beforehand, which is actually why our interview with John Holler was as short as it was.
Yep.
We kind of had to break so that we could get to the airing of the previous week's live streams. It's a nice new format that I think will serve our guests really well.
I think it'll serve our guests really well.
I think you as the audience will appreciate it.
Because we're not pressured. We don't feel like we're under the gun to keep everything constricted to time. So we're not rushing to get the questions. So we can let our guests be thorough with everything.
Yeah.
I want to give a quick shout out to the people in the chat. Mike Fisher, what's up, man? Cheryl, thank you for watching. Pete from Creepy Little Book. What up, dude? Good to see you.
Dude, thank you, Pete.
Yeah, thanks for the comment, man.
I miss you, buddy.
Suzuki GS, thank you so much. We really appreciate, and I don't think I missed. Oh, the Trump card. If I didn't mention that, Merry
Trump
Christmas.
card.
Thanks for joining. And so glad you guys are here watching. We're gonna jump into
what's up, Cheryl?
John Holler's interview. You want to do it right now? Should we jump in?
Without further ado, we'll be in the chat, so feel free to keep the chat rolling. Of course, that helps with the algorithm and all that, but we just like interacting with you guys anyways, and we're gonna roll that beautiful bean footage of John Holler. We're going to roll the game tape and let that interview go. And so enjoy John Holler, Prophecy Watchers.
And we're going to cut in about halfway through. About halfway through this interview just to jump in and chat with you guys and, address any big questions or anything you guys might have. But we'll jump in about halfway through and then we'll finish everything off in the back half of the
And we'll tell you where you can also get some cool t-shirts in case you maybe want to do some little alien hunting or you want to get a typewriter or, anything, whatever. So anyways, whatever. All right, guys, here's John Holler.
Your
YouTube feed is crap. Stop wasting your time watching bot-boosted shills and self-appointed gurus cloying for your attention. Instead, join the Gosslings interview live stream and podcast. The Gosslings, a dark-lit digital speakeasy of free thinkers. A super chat of radical truth-seeking wizards who eat trolls for second breakfast. Topics that'll make your mama's hair stand on end. Ideas that'll make your pastor's knees knock. Guests that will illuminate the hidden chambers of your mind. And interviews that strike down the darkness. Welcome to the Gosslings.
Tonight was just sort of an introduction. They had a Jewish rabbi and a Christian guy talking, and I can talk about that because I think think we're sort of on the cusp of where we need to do these things a little bit differently. The relationship between Christians and Jews. I had a talk with a couple guys who do documentary films from the UK. They're doing a series called Whose Land. It kind of got off track because of the pandemic and everything being shut down for the last couple of years. But I had a long talk, pretty deep talk with these guys about my thoughts, and my thoughts kind of came out of my sermon from last Sunday, which was the trial of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so we had this, how is this going to work? This reconciliation between Christians and Jews in the end times. I don't think it's just getting together for a conference with, like we did tonight with an ABBA cover band, even though they were very, very good and with songs I actually knew, as opposed to a lot of popular radio now that I have no idea who these people are and what they're singing.
Same.
Yeah. I'm 68, so I have a reason for that. But I do.
I'm 39. I don't, John.
Okay. You're
with you.
You probably need to get some counseling or something.
You know what? Tried it twice, and she said
stick.
no.
Yeah. Why are you here?
Thanks, Margaret. Love you.
So anyway, but we have these conferences and we get together and we talk and we say nice things about that. But there's sort of an apex. There's a reconciliation thing that's coming, and I've kind of been thinking, and I know there's other guys that have been thinking about it, is like, what does that look like? How does that work out? What are we doing? Mm-hmm. And I heard a talk, a little introduction to a talk by a guy I know named Reg Kelly. And so I'll be upfront, with everybody that I would hope it's a pre-trib rapture, but I'm not convinced of that. I think it's later. Okay. And a lot of the guys I talked to tonight are on that same level. And you'll probably questions actually. Yeah. You'll probably find less pre-trib people in Jerusalem than you will in America. Certainly in America, there's no doubt about it, unless there's a big group of them visiting from out of town. And because I've sat and had long talks with people here in Jerusalem, and they're just not pre-trib. And so I was thinking about this because my sermon was on the trial of Jesus last week, and you can go listen to it if you want on our YouTube channel, Fellowship Bible Chapel. And Jesus went to the Sanhedrin, and he had these 3 trials on, and they violated like 20 rules. Mm-hmm. Like they weren't supposed to try somebody in the morning before the morning sacrifice. Well, this, the hearing he had before Annas, and then the one before Caiaphas, the high priest, and Annas, the former high priest, who still wielded a lot of power at that time. Those were in the morning. They violated the thing. And then, he goes to the Sanhedrin. In the Sanhedrin, they had to have at least 23 there. They could have as many as 71. And we know from scripture there are some people who are part of that council. I think Joseph of Arimathea was part of that. Now, I don't know if Joseph of Arimathea was. The guy who came, Nicodemus, who came to Jesus by night, was, I think, I'm pretty sure he was part of the Sanhedrin. And they had to have a majority vote. But so if you had 23, which was the minimum that you needed for a trial at the Sanhedrin, you had to, whatever was done with the person who was charged, they had to be convicted by at least 2 votes, which means it couldn't have been 12 to 11. It would have had to have been 13 to 10. And if all of them were there were 70 plus the high priest, so there's 71. The other rule was that Jesus was convicted by unanimous acclamation of the Sanhedrin, which is totally against the rules. They have to vote because it's a capital crime. So they violated all these rules, and then it was a unanimous vote. And under the rules, a unanimous vote had to be thrown out. Now you think, well, wait a minute, isn't that what you're going for? And the reason is, and I think this sort of has to do with Jewish culture. You know, there's the joke. I heard it tonight at the Christian Media Summit. If you have two Jews, you have at least three opinions
Yep.
on something.
I was going to say God hates groupthink, maybe.
Well, it's
Well,
did you ever,
but-
John? Did you ever read that book World War Z by Max Brooks, Mel
No.
Brooks' son? So he talks about that in there. He says, you know, it's a fictional, you know, thing about the zombie apocalypse, but they had this concept in there called the 10th man concept, where it's like in a room of 10 men, we want one guy, and it was in the book. It's developed in Israel. And he said, like, you know, if everybody has a plan, we got to have at least one guy who disagrees with the
One
plan.
voice of dissent.
Well,
Yeah.
and that was the whole point of the rule, was that if there was complete agreement among all these Jewish leaders, scholars, whatever, then there must be collusion and something corrupt going on.
Right. Yeah.
And it's kind of an interesting, as someone who's been a trial lawyer for 40 some years, it's kind of an interesting concept because, you know, in federal court, I don't know if it's still the rule or not, you have to get a unanimous verdict. So you can have the lone, you know, person holding out.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the Sanhedrin rules were no unanimous. If it's a unanimous verdict, it's by definition corrupt and has to be thrown out. So as I was preparing that talk, I went through and looked at when the other through the book of Acts, which our church is going to be teaching on next, all the apostles, John, Peter, they got drugged before, and then Paul, all got drugged before the Sanhedrin. And I heard a talk by a guy I know named Reg Kelly, and Reg, I'm pretty sure Reg is post-trib, but he just really thinks through the scriptures. And I don't agree with him on everything, okay? But I learn a lot when I listen to him. They have a little group called the Mystery of Israel, and they just get together like 50, 60 people, and they talk about the scripture and ask questions, and somebody will do a 2-hour presentation and the other people will challenge them and that type of thing. It's just a great format that I've been to a few times. But Reg was talking about what are we, and this is what I talked about with some guys from the UK tonight who've been thinking about this too, is like this reconciliation thing that's going to happen. You know, how does it happen? So let me just give you kind of the pre-wrath, post-trib perspective on how that all works out, with the understanding that, like, we all want pre-trib, okay?
Yeah.
But what if it's not? Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And the best evidence of who's right on that will be when it happens, you know.
For sure.
So if it happens pre-trib, argument's over. But if it
Mhm.
doesn't, then we've got a whole host of issues to deal with in the
Mhm.
body of Christ. And the apostasy thing is a concerning thing to me because it means falling away, departing from the faith, and that's a concern of mine. But I think too, just as a sidebar is what lawyers say when they want to go off topic, and it just sounds like they're, you know, they're trying to sound smart and making a point. But for example, I had a big trial once, and the judge said counsel could have a sidebar. You know, jury's in the courtroom, and we're examining witnesses and presenting evidence, and we go up there, and you think, you know, is there something wrong? And he's like, you know, I ate something last night that's not really agreeing with me, and I really got to go to the bathroom. Do you mind if we take a break now? And so that's what happens at the sidebar sometimes.
Okay.
So, but the sidebar here too is that a lot of times that in this debate over the timing of the rapture where there's a lot of, you can say it's one of those things where there's a lot of heat but not a lot of light sometimes. The pre-wrath, post-trib people will say, well, you know, pre-trib people will be so disappointed they'll fall away from the faith if it's not a pre-trib rapture. And I acknowledge that could happen, but as I've been thinking through it and looking at what goes on, I don't think that they're going to be a lot of problems with everybody in the body because of how severe these things are going to be if we're still here. And so then the question becomes too is how does that relate to this whole Jewish Christian reconciliation thing? And Paul has this phrase in Romans chapter 11, like, I would that I would provoke them to jealousy. And so the question is, how does that come about? What does provoking them to jealousy mean? And I'm more convinced than Reg Kelly in his talk. And it was just kind of a throwaway, but it really stuck with me, which is the way Bible teaching does a lot of times. It's like, I'll do something, I'll work on it, and I'll think, these are the important points. And then somebody will write and like, oh, you taught this and it prompted me to think about this, and I rededicated my life to the Lord. And it's like, okay, well then that's the Lord doing that. So I don't think it's fair to say that it's just preacher people are going to be distressed and in trouble, because I think it's going to be people in the post-trib and pre-wrath camps as well, because of the things that are coming. So I just don't like those throwaway I think they're kind of, they're just kind of little bombshell arguments or grenade arguments you throw into the conversation. Like, okay, now I've solved that problem. And I'm not sure you have. So the point of all this was, when you look at like Stephen standing before the Sanhedrin, Acts chapter 6 and 7. I mean, he gives this great, to the same guys who've tried Jesus, he gives this great defense of this whole Jewish Christian thing that's come together in Jesus, one in Messiah. And it says in there, like his face shone like an angel. Well, who was there when that happened? It was Paul. Paul was standing right there. And who's was the greatest evangelist in the early church?
Oh yeah.
Paul. It was Paul. And he wrote, most of the epistles in the New Testament. So it's very, I just been thinking about it. And I think the phrase that I've seen used is, we need to be a people prepared to stand faithful with the biblical prophetic witness under the guidance of the Holy Spirit in that period of time. And it's going to bring, God will use it to bring both Jews and Gentiles to himself, and then there'll be this unity that'll take place. So I've just been thinking about that. It's just something that's been on my heart now for about 3 weeks. I can't get it out of my head.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the question is, so how do we move that direction? And I talked to several people. They live here in Jerusalem. They meet regularly with Jews and Jewish leaders, and they know the political people and the parties and all the stuff that's going on right now with the Netanyahu trying to form a new government. But then the question is, so we know that there's this time of trouble coming. And how do we, assuming we're here, so let's prepare like we're going to be here, how do we stand as a faithful witness to people at their worst time of history? And we can almost say like, hey, you know what? Listen, we knew this time was coming, and we're here to help you as we reconcile. And I think this is how it's going to work out. I'm more convinced of that. So it's just, you don't think I'm a crackpot or anything, but it's just something that I've been
I think it's great
talking with people about. And then tonight I really had an opportunity with a couple guys to, I won't embarrass them by giving their names. And the one guy was saying, this is what I've been thinking about for years now. We have all these meetings and we have all this stuff, but where does it end? And it's interesting. Now there's a possibility I may go down to Hebron Friday for Shabbat dinner with a Jewish rabbi and his family.
Oh man, that'd be cool.
And this person's been a Facebook friend of mine and Twitter follower and stuff for a long time. and he's Jewish, man. I mean, he's settler, Zionist, that type of thing.
Right.
He's a great guy. But, there is this tradition about Hebron that it was at Hebron where Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebecca, Jacob, and Leah are buried. And there's no doubt that this is the place. And you have the structure built by King Herod over 2,000 years ago. This has stood through earthquakes and everything. And they built a mosque and a synagogue up on the top. But the memorial building that Herod built is pretty much what it was 2,000 years ago. It's one of the oldest, I think, completely intact buildings that they've ever had. And this Hebron today is a flashpoint. It's one of the biggest flashpoints in the conflict between the Jews and the Arabs. But some of the rabbi tradition is that Hebron is the pattern for what will happen, because when Isaac was buried at Machpelah, Jacob and Esau is Edom, and related to the Ishmaelites and that type of thing. Esau married into that family, which have been at odds for a long time. But the rabbis teach that it will be at Hebron in some great future day where this reconciliation will take place.
Mm.
And so the one thing that and I have no doubt Jesus was at the cave of Machpelah, the structure there that Herod had built. And it's been a flashpoint. There was a Jewish guy, what was his name? Goldstein or something like that, who went in there probably 25 years ago or more and shot up the mosque part and killed about 25 people.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
And as a result of that, they've shut down. So there's all these streets there between the Tomb of the Patriarchs building and where the ancient tell was. And the ancient tell is where David had his palace. And you can go there and there's a staircase that you can walk down to get out onto the tell. But in Abraham's time, that staircase was where you would walk up to the city gate at Hebron. And it's one of the oldest staircases, if not the oldest staircases of antiquity that's been uncovered by archaeologists in the world. And I've walked on it. But the other thing, too, is that when Abraham walked on it, when he came there, it was already 700 or 800 years old.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So we had these things like, you drive around, and I had a big case up in Boston, so I spent a lot of time in Boston. You'd go out to like Cape Ann and that type of thing. You'll see these homes out there built in 1687 or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, so in 1687, that means that the staircase to the ancient city of Hebron, where David ruled from for 7 years, so it's 200 years. What is it? 300 years old to us, but it's it's 4,200 years old.
Yeah.
This staircase.
Yeah.
It's been around.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting thing. So Hebron's very important, and there was a I think in 1928 or 29, the Arabs slaughtered. I mean, literally slaughtered 75 Jewish men, women, and children at Hebron, and so it's always been a flashpoint. When I got back from Israel 5 years ago, when we went down there for the first time, I did a talk about, I don't know if it's still on the internet or not. I know I did a talk. I know I prepared a talk called Why Hebron Matters. Mm-hmm. And I must have become a class project at Al-Quds University, because I had all of a sudden I had hundreds of Arab followers. But some of these guys were I looked at their Facebook and other pages. And I mean, these are like Hamas terrorists and stuff that are following me after just talking about it. So it's a very divided city. So hopefully I'm going to get down there. I may, as I said, may be able to have a Shabbat dinner before I fly back with a Jewish rabbi and his family. And I think it's these things that it's kind of, I just think it's significant that this is happening at Hebron, where this reconciliation thing happened, and Jewish rabbis believes it's a reconciliation thing that's a pattern for the future ultimate reconciliation between Jews and Arabs and Christians and Jews and all this other stuff. So anyway,
that kind of leads me to one of my questions here. You talk about a flashpoint and a future reconciliation. But then you have in Jerusalem, you have the Dome of the Rock sitting on the ancient temple grounds. Sure. And we understand from Scripture that the temple has to be rebuilt. It's one of the huge markers of end times events that you point out. Does the Dome of the? I mean, it would be a huge flashpoint if the Dome of the Rock had to be removed in order for that to happen. Are they looking at a different location or?
Well, okay, so I'm not sure how to approach this first. So let's talk about the different theories on the locations of the temple. There are about 4. One is the Dome of the Rock. And I also think that maybe we need to look at the Scripture because it says when you see Jesus talks about, and that's this what Jesus talks about. This is like kind of central to all of end time Bible prophecy.
Yeah.
Matthew chapter 24.
Yeah.
When you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, get out of town. But then Paul builds on that in 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 4. And the question is, does a temple have to be built? And the answer is, I don't know. But I can't tell you from talking to some people tonight that this is going to be a big deal in the near term.
What up, guys? So you can see we're starting to go down some pretty deep trails with John Holler in this interview. It was cool while he was talking to him while he was actually there in Israel.
Yeah.
Going to Hebron, going to all these places.
And John was a real trooper too, because he, I think, he had gotten no sleep. He had flown all the way out there.
It's like 3 a.m. when we were having this interview on his time.
Yeah. John was very gracious with his time to basically sit up, well into the small hours, jet lagged, and talk to us. And he could have gone for longer. His channel. Let's see. Is it what is
it's Fellowship Bible Chapel?
Fellowship Bible Chapel. He does almost. It's more than weekly updates.
It's like bi-weekly,
right?
Or not bi-weekly. Two times a week.
I was gonna say, it's like 2 or 3 times a week. He'll do updates, and usually just like audio podcast only kind of format.
If you search John Holler, prophecy update, it'll take you right to it. Yeah,
and very relevant information. We were talking about a lot of stuff that is historically biblical. But his stuff is, which we'll sort of touch on in the second half, much more relevant to today and very topical.
Yep.
So,
and we're going to jump back into that here in just a second. But I think first you wanted to mention the
the
tease.
Yes, if you
the tease,
we teased with the tease. If you happen to like any of the t-shirts that you see Nick and I wearing for every interview and every Gosslings live stream. You can get those at our Teespring page, Gosslings. I want to say it's like Gosslings whatever creator / or dash spring. It's basically Teespring's old, or Teespring's new URL.
They did a rebranding and it made this hard for us.
Dude, it made it so impossible. But if you like our t-shirts and you want to be a little frugal with your money, everybody can win by becoming a Patreon member.
That's right.
If you join the Goslings Patreon, you get discounts on all of our merch. You get a ton of other stuff too. Like we have all these different tiers where you can get like
Yeah.
stickers and mugs, and you can get
And
like
a t-shirt.
T-shirts.
Yep.
You can get typewriter one-offs. You can get custom mentions of
Plus early access, exclusive
tons of
interviews.
we do behind the scenes stuff like pretty much every week now.
Yep.
So it's a lot of fun creating that content, and we put it behind a modest paywall. All of the Patreon tiers are in fiat currency denominations. So we do
not accept crypto.
No, we do not accept Mark of the Beast currency.
We don't accept beast money.
Yeah, we accept beast money, not like Leviathan order money. There's a difference.
I guess it's all beast money.
Yeah, it's all beast money. What does it matter? We take dead presidents. No, but all the way up to you can pay to have a question that we will ask the guest. On your behalf. Paid sponsorship. If you want to advertise on our page, much like what we do for Mike Fisher with JardaniJovanovic.com, and like what we do with Joel at Jericho Pottery, we will do that for you. And there's a lot of stuff there, and that's really to help offset the cost of doing this live stream and maintaining the quality, improving the quality, and then also aiming towards getting a producer so that we can gain.
We will someday.
Any technical issues, because just about every time we have something technical come up. That's why we were late today, because the internet was not cooperating, even though Nick spent the morning drilling a hole in the ceiling and running an Ethernet cable to the computer so that we could have direct access.
It's true.
We've had audio issues in the past. It just, we're growing, and there are growing pains that are associated with that. So we would like to be able to afford a producer someday so that we could have somebody who has that technical proficiency.
Absolutely.
And it makes for a better experience for our guests as well.
I think so.
And therefore better interviews. So
that's right.
Sort of
we can strike down more darkness.
Strike it all down.
Strike it all.
Strike down.
Strike it down hard.
Strike it all down. Yeah.
Real quick shout out to Lynn Etheridge. Hey, thanks for joining us tonight. Will, appreciate you joining. Carol Ryan, and of course Ice Queen Empress. Glad that you're joining as well. Thank you guys for watching. Missed you guys when we started the live stream earlier, so just wanted to say thank you for jumping. I know there are more people than that watching, but they jumped in the chat, so just want to say thank you for that. Yeah, and then Mike, you were asking, do we have a T-shirt with wings and the broken sword? We do. I think our very first design of the Gosslings T-shirt was a V-neck pattern. We haven't published it, but we did make a design with it.
We did, and we might need to tweak it a little bit, but our very first T-shirt design was a V-neck tri-blend, which is the same material as this, and it had our Gosslings logo on it. And the logo is good. We just have to tweak the colors a little bit more and maybe redo the resolution of the size just to make it a little bit better. But I really liked it.
I like the broken sword. I like the broken sword logo.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, we'll stop patting ourselves on the back now.
I might need rotator cuff surgery.
And then we'll get back to the rest of this interview with John Holler.
Yeah.
It's going to be good. We're going to be talking a little bit about Israeli politics.
Yep.
Some weird stuff going on in the UK, and also the seat of Satan.
Yes.
So that's all coming up right now, guys. Hope you're liking it. And we'll still be in the chat talking with you guys as we watch. Here we go.
Those were some of the questions we were going to ask you. But you know what? When it comes to King Charles, it's so weird calling him King Charles. Now. Like he's always, even at 39, he's always John at Prince Charles, you know, in my mind. But but you know what? No one ever suspects who no one ever suspects to try and assassinate the king? The jester.
Yeah.
The fool. No one ever suspects the fool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in a way, it's kind of a 5D chess big brain move by Satan to, maybe even utilize.
That's a good point.
Somebody like him.
So I'm just saying is like, I'm not too dismissive. So another one would be, look, I have friends who believe that the final Babylon will be a rebuilt Babylon in Iraq.
Right.
And it may very well be. Okay.
I remember all this stuff about Saddam Hussein back in the 90s, digging that stuff up. I used to read all those like Tex Mars books, about that stuff. And Yeah.
And there was a blog post by somebody at the Washington Post. You can probably dig through the web archive and find it. I have at times been able to find it, where they were talking about, hey, let's move the UN to Babylon, rebuild Babylon and move the UN there. And that came from secular people. Sometimes I wonder if they're just trolling us or whether they really
a little bit, like the pergamum thing that Obama was doing. The seed of pergamum. I think there's a little bit of that goes around.
Listen,
but it's ritualistic in nature also.
Well, that altar, the Zeus altar from Pergamum. There's a guy who I did a talk on that back in 2016, in March of 2016. It's probably still online someplace. Might be at Believers in Grace Church out in Iowa. And I did a thing on Pergamum that weekend. And I had found this incredible video where the guy did a 3D recreation video of the Acropolis of Pergamum, including the Zeus altar, which ended up in the Pergamum Museum on Museum Island in Berlin. But that altar was the inspiration for a young architect in 1930s Germany named Albert Speer, who used it as the model to build the Nazi reviewing grounds at Nuremberg. And so, there really is a satanic connection to that type of thing. And then you have our president come along and do the same thing when he accepted the nomination. I think it was at Denver at Mile High Stadium. So you see all these, again, this is just like these convergence of these things. So my friends who believe that Babylon will be rebuilt in Iraq, I'm not gonna get up and say you're a fruitcake, you're a lunatic for believing that. It may work out that way.
Yeah.
But I also can use common sense that, look at Dubai. It's taken 30 years to get Dubai into this phenomenal commercial city. You have Mohammed bin Salman, who's trying to build that NEOM, the line down there in Saudi Arabia. And they're actually moving. In my next update, I'll actually have satellite images of what's going on there. There's been drone footage of the construction going on, and they're building it. But that type of city has, in the look of NEOM inside, between those walls is hanging gardens, which is very much like Babylon.
Yep.
And the other thing too to remember too is that when God intervened at Babel, the Tower of Babel, the tower wasn't finished.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that the city has to be completely finished. That's not what I'm saying, but it has to be this great commercial city. And so if that's the case, then you can probably move some of the stuff about end times off a few decades, I think. Which is not an attractive prospect with the way things are going right now.
Right. That's a long few decades, John.
Like I said, I'm 68. Okay. I've been most of the places I wanted to go. Done most of I haven't shot my age yet in golf, but
okay.
I've come within a shot. I've come within one stroke.
We got to get you and Stephen Pressfield together then. You
Who's
guys.
That?
He's the guy who wrote the Legend of Bagger Vance and the War of Art, Gates of Fire.
So you guys don't know me that well, so I do have a golf story, and so I have I worked this into, they always say have an elevator speech when you're marketing. And we were trying a case in Fort Worth, Texas, and we're on about the 8th floor and the 9th floor. And on 8, the doors open and a judge gets on. And Fort Worth, Texas judges wear Stetsons and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
And so
I love that.
Same.
He goes, well, I hear you boys are down here from Ohio trying a case. I said, yes, Your Honor, we are. And you're up there with Judge Crowley. I said, yes, sir. And he goes, well, it's pretty mighty hot. It was in the summer. He goes, mighty hot here, isn't it? He goes, it's so hot. I don't even think I want to go home and cut my grass. And so I said, well, Judge, golf is played on grass. And let me tell you about what happened to me one time when I was playing golf. And so between the 8th floor and the 1st floor, I got my whole story in. And my partner had heard this like 1,000 times by now. He's like, Haller, just shut up. Quit quit trying to bring that into every conversation. So I went out to play golf with a friend of mine. We're taking the weekend off. He was in from Arizona for the Memorial Tournament, which was at Muirfield Village in Dublin. It was the closest course to the house I lived in. And we would play golf in the morning, tournament in the afternoon. So Sunday morning, we went to a course right across the river. Second hole was 175 yards uphill into the wind. I hit a 6-iron, hit about 10 feet from the hole. Boom, in for a hole in one. Then there was a short par 4. Then the fourth hole is 195 yards downwind. Pins all the way. You can't even see the bottom half of the pin because it's behind a trap. And I turned to my friend and I said, don't aim at the pin. It'll never stay on the green with the wind behind us. Mm-hmm. So I took the same club, same ball, aimed to the middle of the green, but I pushed it. It just barely, it hit on the downslope on the, cleared the trap, hit on the downslope, took one bounce and hit the flag stick and dropped in for another hole in one. So, whoa. So I've only had, and I missed a third one in the same round with that same ball by 1/8 of an inch.
Oh my gosh.
But that's been 27 years ago. So I don't know that but I always
amazing.
Said, well, I think you have a special dispensation to tell a story like that, a golf story. If the odds of it happening, whatever you did happening are greater than 65 million to 1. And the odds are 67 million to 1 that you would, someone would do that in the same round. So
better than the dinosaurs, John,
yeah. So like I said, I had an elevator speech and I worked it in between the eighth floor and the first floor. And my partner's like, oh, I can't believe I've heard this story
awesome,
so many
dude.
times.
Uncle Steve, he would love to talk to you about story, yeah. He's our favorite author, and he's been a great
he's been a good guest, good friend,
Patreon kind of ours in a weird way, a benefactor in so many ways.
I'm familiar with the story, so it's
it does hilarious.
I mean, I could go on, but they're the only two that I ever had, and they came literally 10 minutes apart. So,
hey, John, I got a question for you.
Sure.
That is an awesome golf story.
That's great.
I thought I was so cool with my birdie like 20 years ago. You nailed it, John. I got a question for you. That's kind of it's a bit of a layered question. We have so many topics, and we're not going to be able to get to any of our questions in time. But things like, you mentioned the Tower of Babel and, and the idea of maybe rebuilding Babylon, that they were hoping to do and having it be the seat of the UN, and then you look at all these things that are these convergence points that are happening now with Elon Musk and with transhumanism, and then things that you talk about like Neuralink, smart cities, as it was in the days of Noah, so will it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. And then later on, do you think later on with the Tower of Babel, do you think that we are headed towards another major point like that, as we've kind of talked about already, within our lifetime of having something that is so egregiously technologically advanced and prideful that it will cause God to basically spank us like he did at the Tower of Babel, for our own sake?
Yeah, I have no doubt that this is coming. I mean, look, it's was one of the talks I had with some people tonight. I was like, we do these prophecy updates. And so back in
they're amazing, by the way.
Yeah.
We've been listening to them.
So in 2021, one of the first or one or two that I did in the year, I think it was like, okay, so how far are we going to get into 2021 before we say, I wish we could go back to the good old days of 2020? Or in 2022, like, how far into the year were we? Like 3 days maybe before we said, could we go back to the good old days of 2021? And so, and I'll do it if I remember to do it in early 2023. Like, could we go back to the good old days of 2022? I don't think that we're ever going back at this point. I just don't see it. There's too much acceleration, convergence of all this stuff happening all
that
at once.
Singularity kind of angle, that
and some of it. And look, I don't know how successful these guys will be anyway.
Yeah,
but it's like so what? So would we have sat around and done prophecy update in ancient Babel, chiseling on rocks, like, well, I don't really think they'll ever get this tower built.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't the point. The point is, what were they doing? What was behind it that was so egregious to God that he intervened
Right.
into human history at that time? And so the next time he intervenes, I think this is it. This is the end times where he comes and sets up his kingdom. Look, the stuff that I see, I don't even put a tenth of what I see into these updates.
Wow.
I mean, I could just sit there.
Dense.
Very dense.
And I talk longer than a lot of guys, and that's just me. But I've threatened that I'm just going to sit there with my news feed open on my iPhone and do an update someday.
Yeah,
because that's how it is.
Yeah.
So, hey, if you guys have been enjoying this interview and you'd like to hear the rest of it, including some really down and dirty stuff that we're not allowed to say here on YouTube, head over to patreon.com/the Gosslings. We'd love to have your support there and share exclusive content with you.
That's right. Keep it cool. And remember, these are interviews that strike down the darkness.
They do indeed strike down the darkness. They strike down all the darkness.
That's right. Strike it down hard.
So hard.
So hard.
Whatever. We might have to redo that Patreon segment.
What's great about that? Like Nick may have missed his cue, but he totally redeemed himself.
I tried. I totally missed my cue though. It was embarrassing.
Got 70 miles to the gallon on that.
I'll redo it. Not tonight.
Yeah.
Maybe in a couple of weeks. I don't know. Yeah. We'll see how it goes.
We'll let it ride.
If we start losing subscribers, then I'll definitely redo it.
People are like, who are these two dorks?
Oh my gosh. Well, that was our interview with Sean Haller, and it was super informative. There's a whole lot more that you can see, of course, Patreon on the Patreon. But really appreciate everyone. Kim Masters joined.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, since we got lots of people watching, I'm going to just go ahead and pull the chat up here on the screen.
Yeah.
And say good evening, all.
Good evening.
I would love to know everyone's opinion on what John was touching on there at the end.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to like the whole transhumanism agenda.
Yeah. Which we also talked about will be next week's episode with the mighty GW, Gary Wayne. And to answer your question, Mike, Mike Fisher had asked if we had any more questions about Tim Cohen's book, which is about the Antichrist. It's called The Antichrist and a Cup of Tea.
Yep, The Antichrist and a Cup of Tea.
It's about King Charles III, possibly being the Antichrist.
Yep, very interesting.
And let's see, and the coat of arms of King Charles. So yes, short answer, Mike, is yes to all of that.
Yep.
Gary did touch on that stuff.
It'll be great to get Adam's opinion on that.
Oh yeah,
yeah, too.
Wow. Yeah, man, I miss Adam so
much. I know.
Much.
It's probably like 1 a.m. Where he's at right now. 12 midnight, 1 a.m. something like that. Well, guys, we really appreciate it, as we do at the end of all of our live streamies. Want to give out a shout out first of all. Want to give out shout out to Shannon, our Hemingway level patron.
Thank you, Shannon.
Huge support of the show. Thank you so much for your support. Also, shout out to Ice Queen Empress, also a patron, Orwell level patron.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your support, and thanks for joining on this live stream too tonight. And if you are, and of course, I'll just put up the ticker here. Tons of people that have been supporting us. These are our patrons. Thank you guys so much for the support. It's amazing. And
thanks, Pete.
Hey, thank you, Pete. Appreciate it, man.
Man, I miss you, dude. Yeah, it's so good to see you, Pete. Even if it's in the chat, man. I miss talking to you. We got to reconnect and see if we could talk about Bigfoot, Dogman, Alien Disclosure.
We actually did a reaction video watching a clip of someone who caught something on their phone that looked like Dogman to me.
Yeah, Pete, you've probably seen it. It's the black guy with the blue do-rag, and he's smoking cigarettes. He's doing like a Facebook Live thing.
Yeah, it's a Facebook Live video.
Yeah, and then like Dogman like skitters across the lawn,
like right under a street lamp,
across the fence line.
It's horrifying.
Yeah,
it's horrifying. Oh my gosh.
So Pete is the guy who runs Creepy Little Book, and if none of you have ever, if you've heard of us, you've probably heard of Creepy Little Book, but if you haven't, Creepy Little Book is one of the best YouTube channels out there. He covers all of the stuff that we cover and more. He's a hell of a nice guy.
Yeah, he's awesome.
We love Pete to death. He has a great fan base, a great community. The chat is always tons of fun.
Yeah.
And he is a workhorse. I mean, he does, Pete, correct me if I'm wrong, buddy, but I think you're doing it like 5 nights a week, something like that. Like it's
a lot. Yeah.
Dude, you're a
Live
machine.
Streams every night, man.
Yeah. Wife
Crazy.
and kid. Like I'm impressed, Pete. You know,
Super
you and
good.
Nick have the same work ethic. I'm way too lazy for that, but you guys are killing it.
You
So-
are not. Oh, don't talk about stuff like that.
Yeah, well, you know, whatever. So,
He has his skill set and he applies it to securing only the best guests for you guys, which I would never be able to do. He's got a way with word. He's more of a wordsmith than I am. We're both writers, but this guy can write. Let me tell you. So when he sends
Thanks,
an email,
man.
he talks to someone. He knows how to hook him and get him in.
I'm the Fisher King.
Yeah.
I'm the Fisher,
Fisher King.
I'm the Fisher King of guests, baby.
Well, not
So.
to be obnoxious, guys, but if you are not yet a supporter of the show, we'd appreciate it. Patreon.com/the Gosslings there. I did it my obligatory 3 times.
Yes.
4 if you include little pre-recorded thing that we have to redo.
Oh yeah.
We have to pre-record. If that makes any sense.
I mean, I think it's kind of cute in a way. You
Yeah.
know, it like shows our vulnerability.
Let's just say that was real time, unedited. I was in a hurry.
one take.
It's like we did it during the week where there's like a Christmas thing every night. There's choir, concerts,
Yeah.
bands, recitals.
It's really funny
Yeah.
watching Nick like gas out, because Nick is like a 1968 Camaro. When he runs out of gas, there is no reserve tank, and all of that inertia just becomes dead weight, and he pumpkins.
Dude,
his
I hit the
little
wall
gilded
hard.
carriage turns into a pumpkin. You hit a wall. Yeah.
There's a glaze that comes over my eyes.
Like we were hanging out last night. We were doing
In the middle of recording a reaction video.
yeah, we were doing like a funny, just like sports reaction video, something like totally not related to our wheelhouse at all, just because,
to
and
be
that
funny.
therefore made it funny.
Yeah.
You know, and I look over at Nick,
And all of a sudden the jokes just stopped.
yeah, and I get nothing from this side of the table at all. You know, so,
It was a long day.
yeah, likewise, we get it. We all have those. Anyways, yes, John Holler, amazing guest. We will have him back, and when we have him back, we are going to square away at least 2 hours for John.
Yeah, we need to square away 2 hours. with
Yeah, he is worth every bit of it. And then his YouTube channel you have to check out. And then I think, isn't he on like Prophecy Watchers sometimes as well?
I don't think I've seen him on there. No, I don't think I've seen him. I don't think he has time.
Okay.
He just I tried to find some podcast episodes with John Holler, and there's only
Mhm.
like a couple because he spends all of his time doing he's a deacon at his church
Yeah,
and he teaches, and that's how this whole thing came about. The Fellowship Bible Church,
yeah, it's really funny.
it's in Columbus, Ohio,
Mhm.
and it's a small congregation, maybe 80 people, 100
Yeah.
people, tiny little church. And John's one of the deacons, and he does a prophecy update. He's a teacher
Mhm.
at the church, and so during the week he'll go and he'll do a talk at his church for the congregation. He calls it a prophecy update. Well, he decided he wanted to, I guess, document them,
Yeah,
and so I'll just live stream them to YouTube.
yeah.
And so he started live streaming to YouTube like a couple of years ago, and there are only like 80 people that go to this church.
Mhm.
But their YouTube channel has like 56,000 subscribers.
Yeah, it's insanely large.
That's how
Yeah.
people want this information, because they go to their church
yeah.
and their pastors won't talk about the end times.
They won't talk
They
about
won't
the end
look at
times.
the, current events and say, well, this is how it kind of lines up in the timeline of everything.
Mhm.
He's doing that, and there's so much coming at us all the time.
Yeah, we are
and he's-
living in.
He's like a
interesting
ticker.
times.
He's like the New York Stock Exchange ticker,
Yeah.
for the end times.
Yeah,
just
keeping
all
track of
week.
all of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's cool. You guys got to check him out.
Yeah,
check
but
them
it's so amazing how somebody can start a church and have 80 people, but then thanks to the internet have over 50,000 subscribers. Basically, he has a church of over 50,000 members in his congregation. It's just they're like all online.
Just people want to learn.
Yeah. And that's how you know you're doing like the will of the Lord,
That's
man.
exactly
when
right.
you know so many people are tuning in from all over the place, including us.
Yep.
You know, we're
Yep.
big fans.
That's exactly right.
So he's great. Yeah.
Well, man, I don't have anything else.
No, I think we're
Anything
good.
else you want to mention?
No, I think we're good. We mentioned all of our obligatories.
Yep.
John Holler is a great guest, and then thank you again to Mike and Lynn and Cheryl for being in the chat,
Thank you guys.
and Trump Card. We appreciate you as well, and then Pete from Creepy Little Book, another great channel that you have to check out.
Yes.
Absolutely love it. He live streams a few times a week.
He was a guest of ours about a year ago, right?
Yeah, we had him on, and then we had so much fun, man.
It was awesome.
Yeah, Pete, you are such a cool guest to have on.
Yeah.
Totally different, like energy, but same subject matter, and it's a real breath of fresh air. And Pete doesn't do a whole lot of interviews because he's got his own thing that keeps him super busy, and it's worth checking out. So, so it's a great little network of people that we kind of are plugged into. We love our guests.
Next week,
be
back right here on the Gosslings.
Yes.
Same bad time, same bad channel.
Yep.
For a 2-hour interview.
Yeah.
With the great Gary Wayne.
Yeah. And if you think like, wow, 2 hours with Gary Wayne, first of all,
yes, I'm asking for 2 hours of your Christmas day.
Yeah, Christmas day.
We will not be in the chat.
No,
we're not going to be doing a live intro, outro, so forth.
Yeah.
It's going to be the whole thing's pre-recorded, but that's going to go live next Sunday. We will be back live on January 1.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be a normal thing. But yeah, we are taking Christmas Day off.
Yeah. We're gonna take Christmas Day off, and
this ain't Arby's. By God, I gotta have a break.
You don't offer any jalapeno poppers?
No, this is not a Chinese restaurant. We're closed on Christmas.
It's why did I even come here? No. So, but here's a great thing about our interview that we did with Gary Wayne today that we recorded that will air on Christmas Day. We spoke to Gary for 3 hours.
3 hours.
3 hours. It is probably a record. It is probably the longest we have ever spoken to any guest, including Gabe. Like Gabe got real close, but I think Gary may have beat him.
Yep.
So, Gabriel Bello, another great guest, saxophonist, Christian musician who has had some very interesting supernatural experiences happen to him. Definitely worth checking out his channel as well, Gabriel Bello Music. Mm-hmm. But our interview with Gary Wayne went for 3 hours. We will air probably an hour and a half to 2 hours of it. And then if you want the full unedited exclusive content, then again, the whole Patreon thing.
Become a patron of the Gosslings at the Orwell level or higher.
Yeah.
And you will get the 3-hour unedited interview with Gary Wayne where we go deep. And that's going to be live tonight on the Patreon.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to throw that up tonight after the live stream. After we get some sushi.
Yeah. Now we got to go get sushi and Massimo curry. So, nice. Trump Card sub to Creepy Little Book. Dude, you're going to love it. Yeah. It's such a cool community. You're going to have a blast.
Yeah. When you're watching it live, Trump Card, when you're watching Creepy Little Book, man, jump in the comments. It's such a great community. It's like our chat community.
Yeah. Like times 50.
Oh yeah, bigger, obviously bigger. But the people there are great. Like nobody's fussy.
Yeah, nobody's mean. Like
it's
nobody gets a pissy little attitude.
Yeah,
everybody's cool.
Yeah,
everybody has fun.
Yeah,
because like you don't have to be there. So
that's right.
Anyways,
but you'll want to be.
You'll want to be.
You'll feel bad about everyone that you miss.
That's right. Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, we're gonna take off, so we're gonna do our sign off here real quick.
Yeah.
I'm Jonathan.
I'm Nick.
We are the Gosslings. Go forth
and strike down the darkness.
Nailed it. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.